Over the past year or so, I've done a lot of campaign breakdowns, and it has been a lot of fun. So many different custom campaigns that have their own unique settings, stories, and innovative mechanics. Most custom maps on the workshop take themselves very seriously and stay grounded in the world of Left 4 Dead. However, there are some custom maps that do the complete opposite. To put it in the simplest terms, some of these custom maps in Left 4 Dead can be a little unconventional in their design. This is nothing new, and these kinds of maps have always existed, but what if I told you about a series of custom maps that takes difficulty to a completely different level? A custom map that is downright cruel in its level design. A custom map that has been highly requested for the past year now. In today's custom campaign breakdown, we're going to talk about Glubtastic. I have been holding this video off for a very long time now, because Glubtastic is very unique when compared to the other campaigns I have done a video on. This series of custom campaigns are famous for their crushing difficulty and level design. If you're at all familiar with the Glubtastic maps, you know what I'm talking about. Playing through Glubtastic all by yourself with AI teammates is a life-changing experience, and I mean that in the most negative way possible. I've said it before and I'll say it again, troll maps have always existed, but Glubtastic is truly in a league of its own. I've been holding this off for long enough, and we have a lot to cover. So, without wasting any more time, let's break down the story behind Glubtastic. The campaign starts out with the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors in a small room. When you grab your supplies and walk through the door, you find a room full of zombies. In this room, we have our first challenge. You have to open the correct door to proceed, and if you open the wrong door, a witch and a smoker will spawn directly in front of you. This may seem like a standard challenge at first, but remember, we just left the safe room. When you finish up this area, you walk up a ramp, and when you reach the top, you can find the No Mercy helicopter pilot sitting by the door. And when you walk into the next room, you are met with multiple doors and a death pit. In this room, you have to open 2 doors to unlock the next area. When you open these doors, however, a tank will spawn. The room you're in is laughably small, and 1 punch is all it takes to end your run. Your best bet is to run back to the previous room and kill the tanks there. However, there is another strategy, but it's very risky. In this room, you have to jump from platform to platform. If you position yourself correctly, you can actually body block the tank and he'll fall into the pit and instantly die. This can speed things up, but like I said earlier, it comes with massive risk. Also, in this room on the left, you can find a medkit on the ground. Here's a friendly tip. Do not grab this medkit. If you do, a tank will spawn right on top of you. It's best to just ignore it and move on. This segment in solo play is very difficult. Even with AI improvement mods, these segments gave me a lot of trouble. And just a friendly reminder, we are halfway through chapter 1. I knew from the start that beating Glubtastic with bots is an almost impossible task. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's possible, but it sounds absolutely miserable and I don't want to put myself through that. Which is why I called up some friends. For the first time in the series, I actually needed help. A special thank you to Audie Bell, Cookie Blitz, and Payne. This breakdown would not be possible without their assistance. Here's another friendly tip. If you want to play Glubtastic, bring your friends. This campaign is a troll map. There's cheap bullshit around pretty much every corner, and when you're playing with friends, the bullshit is a lot easier to manage. Now, let's continue breaking down chapter 1. The survivors proceed to the next room and find a very large tower. You have to climb the ladders to reach the top. Seems simple at first, but as you make the climb, boomers will drop from the top of the ladder. If you get hit, you will be knocked off the ladder and you will fall to your death. You have to move from side to side while climbing the ladders, and honestly, this segment is not that bad, especially when compared to everything else in chapter 1. During the climb, however, there is something that you have to watch out for. About halfway up the tower, you can find this door. You can use this door to revive dead teammates, but if you open the door, a bunch of T-posing Rochelles will burst out of the room and knock you off the tower. You could still be pulled up by a teammate, so at least it's not an instant kill. Also, before we go any further, there is something else that deserves a mention. Chapter 1 of Glubtastic actually has a game over screen that looks like this. I have nothing else to add, so we're just going to move on. When you reach the top of the tower, you find the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors and the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors T-posing inside of refrigerators. If you look dead ahead, you find the safe room door, but this is another trap. When you try to open the door, the hallway will extend and multiple tanks will spawn. When this happens, just sprint for the safe room. There is absolutely no point in trying to fight that many tanks with the weapons you have on hand. If you survive the onslaught of tanks, you reach the real safe room and head over to chapter 2. And this is hands down my least favorite chapter in the entire campaign. When you transition over to chapter 2, the survivors are on a roller coaster. This entire chapter is basically a rail shooter, and it's not fun in the slightest. You have to shoot the correct targets while riding the coaster. If you miss or shoot the wrong target, a tank will spawn in the cart. At the beginning of the ride, the targets are Mustachio and the Little Peanut Man. Very simple at first, until you reach the halfway point of the chapter and the targets are then changed to this. There is no way to tell which target is the correct one, so you just have to shoot it and hope for the best. Also, this roller coaster is janky as hell, which makes aiming a lot harder. This entire chapter is absolutely fucking miserable, and I did not enjoy it in the slightest. Thankfully, the remaining chapters aren't nearly as bad as this. When you reach the end of the coaster, the survivors find their next safe room. A witch will spawn inside this room, but a shotgun can dispatch her very easily. Now, let's head over to Chapter 3. The start of Chapter 3 takes place in a forest. It looks like a completely normal custom campaign at first, until you open up the door and find your next challenge. The survivors have to cross the street while dodging cars moving at very high speeds. If you get downed in the middle of the road, you're dead. There is nothing you can do about it. Zombies will be attacking you as well, making this segment a lot harder. In this area, you can find multiple signs. Shooting them will spawn a random item like an adrenaline shot or a jukebox. When you reach the end of the road, you can find a sign that looks like this, and if you shoot it, you can probably guess what happens. When you make it past all the cars, the survivors are faced with a very long road. You have to reach the end of the road while dodging buses that can come from either direction. For this segment, I used an adrenaline shot and stuck to one lane and walked backwards. If you're fast enough, you can dodge the buses, but it's very hard to do. Also, like I said earlier, the zombies will be attacking you the entire time. This segment boils down to luck. Even if your timing is perfect, a smoker or jockey is all it takes to end your run. When you reach the end of the road, you can find these two signs. If you shoot this sign, you will go down instantly. If you shoot this sign, however, a safe room door will spawn. When you take a look at the safe room door, you can see a tank clipping right through. However, when you open the door, the tank will disappear. Seems like another trick at first, until you step inside the safe room and a tank will spawn directly in front of you. If you're fast enough, you can close the safe room door and lock the tank inside, but on a first playthrough, this caught me off guard completely. Glubtastic is full of cheap bullshit, but this might be my personal favorite trick. The map creators put a fake tank in a safe room, just for it to disappear, and then they spawn an actual tank not even 2 seconds later. It's so clever, I can't help but respect it. Now, let's head over to Chapter 4. When you leave the safe room, you find another road, but this time it's completely vertical and shooting upwards towards the sky. The survivors have to jump from car to car to reach the top of the road. The survivors can actually moon jump during this segment, but this is still a difficult challenge. When you reach the halfway point of the road, a helicopter appears and a smoker will spawn inside. If the smoker pulls you, it's an instant restart, so be as fast as you can. When you reach the top of the road, the survivors find a manhole and walk inside. For this challenge, the survivors have to do even more parkour, and it should be noted that I suck at parkour in Left 4 Dead 2, so I did not have fun during this segment. There is a positive to this challenge, however. If you miss your jump, you will be sent back to the beginning of the area. No instant death or anything like that, just a clean restart. It's a very generous design choice that saves the player a lot of time. When you finish the obstacle course, you can press this button and a floor will spawn, so your teammates can finish this segment with 0 difficulties. When you head over to the next area, the survivors find another obstacle course, but this time there's a boat with a smoker driving around the area, and he will pull you into the water if you don't kill him fast enough. If you fail the obstacle course, you are sent right back to the beginning of the area just like last time. Overall, Chapter 4 isn't nearly as bad as the other chapters, and it can be easily completed if you mastered the movement on the source engine. If only the other chapters were this lenient with the player. Now let's head over to Chapter 5. When you leave the safe room, the survivors find themselves in a massive open room. 3 doors can be found, and each of them contains a challenge that must be completed. Let's start with the door on the far left. This is another parkour challenge. The platforms will flicker and disappear, and you have to jump at the appropriate time. This is hands down the easiest challenge. It just takes a little time. When you reach the end, you spawn in a completely different room, and when you look dead ahead, you can see this. Multiple T-posing bills can be seen on a cart. The survivors then shove the cart down a ramp and end up back in the starting area. When you look in the center of the room, you can find this. The T-posing bills have been rearranged into, well, this. We'll talk more about this in just a minute. For now, let's talk about the second challenge. When you open up the door in the middle, you find a giant orange ramp. The survivors have to reach the top while dodging falling logs. And this is hands down the most difficult challenge in the finale, at least in my opinion. The logs can be very unpredictable, and getting hit by a single one means you're going down. You can get revived, but it obviously comes with massive risk. When you reach the end of the ramp, you have to climb a ladder while dodging even more logs. Getting killed here is very common, because you have very little time to react. When you reach the top, you find another cart, but this time the survivor is Francis. When you shove the cart, you make it to the bottom and see this. The survivors are clearly building something. It's just impossible to discern what it is. Now let's talk about the final challenge. When you open up the door on the far right, you are met with a pack of witches. A Molotov can dispatch them quickly, just make sure you keep your distance. When you finish off all the witches, you walk down this hallway and walk towards a door, but just before you reach it, 2 tanks will spawn. The first tank will spawn dead ahead, blocking the door, and the second tank will spawn behind you, blocking the exit. You are quite literally sandwiched in between 2 tanks. Depending on the difficulty, this segment can be an absolute nightmare, especially when you're playing by yourself. When you finish off the tanks, the survivors walk through the door, and you find a cart full of T-posing Zoes. And when you shove the cart down and return to the starting area, you discover what we've been building. The Left 4 Dead 1 survivors have been transformed into a helicopter, and this is our escape vehicle. I truly cannot fucking believe I'm doing this. The survivors then board the helicopter and fly away from this hellhole of a custom map, and that concludes the story behind Glubtastic. This custom map was an absolute nightmare to play through, but if you're able to look past all the cheap bullshit and countless deaths, there is actual fun to be had here. Glubtastic is very hard, and a lot of times it feels downright unfair, but there is a magic to this custom map that I can't quite explain. If you want to play Glubtastic, bring your friends. It completely changes the experience, and I promise you will have a lot more fun. Thankfully, this breakdown is finally over, and I never have to talk about Glubtastic ever again. Oh, sorry, let me just check my notes here. What the fuck do you mean they made 5 more? Before we end the video, I wanted to thank Audibel, Payne, and Cookie Blitz one more time. Playing through Glubtastic is very annoying and very difficult, but at least I didn't have to do it alone. Be sure to check out their channels if you haven't already. They make great content. And with that, we can conclude the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.